Really wore my watch to bed last night for the first time. Um, and I got close to 8 hours of sleep. I kind of forgot to check it lately, but so I'm doing okay too. Joe, how are you doing on your sleep?
I'm just looking at my Whoop app and checking up on Dr. Saunders. It looks like he did get 7.5 hours of sleep on average this week, so I can verify that. Mine has been, oh, not as much, 651. So I feel good though, like my recovery
That's good.
scores are in the green more so. And side note, but I found an interesting thing that helps my HRV, activated charcoal at night, right before bed. And
Really?
it's a detox. It detoxifies. It adsorbs and instead of absorbs different, like some heavy metals and different things like that. But it's an anti-inflammatory. And I know that I have inflammation because when I take an ibuprofen before bed, my HRV goes up, and that's like not very often, like 5 times a year maybe. But so I've been trying to figure out, okay, how do I lower inflammation? And I know diet is part of it, but I think there might be a connection to having amalgam fillings, which I've had for a long time, which is 50% mercury,
Mm.
and there's a slow leaching of that into your system. And I don't know, I think that charcoal is helping with that. So um,
I
that's my
took one
theory.
last night too, Joe.
Yeah,
I only took one because I didn't know how my body was going to react.
yeah.
But it's really interesting. At like 7 in the morning, my HRV was 121.
Wow.
What?
Is that like super high, I would
121?
imagine, for you?
This is on my watch though, not
Yeah.
on my Whoop band. So, but as I went to sleep, it did drop down quite a bit, but it came up really high in the morning, which I don't think it's ever done that before. So now I kind of want to reactivate my Whoop band and really get into this a little bit again.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But I thought that was really interesting. But I also, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I always wonder, what if you take magnesium, or how all of that plays into it. Anyway,
We'll
these
have
are
to
the
do
tangents we go off on.
we'll have to do a webinar sometime on heart rate variability and technology maybe, and tracking numbers
Yeah,
like
we
that
haven't
and
done
how
that.
that could
Yeah, we haven't
help.
talked about that fully in a while.
Yeah.
So that will be good. Um, Dr. Saunders was also sharing that he's starting to write a book. So I thought many of you would be excited about that.
Maybe
So,
not.
yeah, yeah, they would. And, but this is stuff that you're sharing with us sometimes too. You're kind of digging into fat and carbs and not eating them together, which you've shared that on the webinar a few
Yeah,
times.
yeah.
So that'll be kind of interesting to see where that takes you. And we're excited to learn from you. Anything you want to share about that?
Well, it is really interesting how there's like these two sets of research, like they're totally like in different camps, and they like fight with each other. So you have the book called The China Study, right? And this is a study about how if you eat protein, you're going to die from cancer, you're going to die young, and all that. And then there's this whole like vegan, like Dr. McDougall and Dr. Esselstyn and Dean Ornish, and these zero fat people, like complete vegan, zero fat, don't put anything in, don't even eat an avocado, even though that's technically vegan, right? It's just too much fat in it. And then there's another camp on the other side that is like carnivore, fat, keto. Like ketogenic means fat. You're burning fat. That's what it's all about. So fat, fat, fat. And they're eating fat bombs, and they're taking what do they take? Like a little bit of anyway, they take like cream cheese and they just wrap it in nuts or something and eat a fat bomb to start burning fat, right? So you have these two camps, and they're like fighting against each other, and I look at the research at one, yeah, that looks pretty good. I look at the research at the other one, yeah, that looks pretty good. And then it's like, wait a minute, how do we melt these together? Well, the fact is, the human metabolism is highly variable. We're very resilient. We can go back and forth really easily. And in fact, they did some research on gut bacteria and found if you were like a perfect vegan diet, and then you suddenly one day switched to carnivore, where all you ate was meat, your bacteria in your intestines changed that quickly. One day, boom, changed to a totally different type of bacteria, but a broader spectrum of bacteria on the carnivore diet than was on the vegan diet. It was really weird. So, how does that work? Well, I've come up with an idea that actually I think would fit well. And it seems like as I'm doing more research and getting into this, it's working really well. So you can have a fat day or a carb day. You're on your carb day, you don't eat, you have less than 20 grams of fat. You're always going to get some, but you have very, very little fat. You don't add fat at all to anything. You just eat carbs. So you can have all the beans and peas and lentils and rice and corn and salads and lettuce and broccoli and all that stuff you can have on a carb day. But you would, and even on a carb day, you could have protein. So you could have tofu and lean meat, something like a chicken breast, which actually has very little fat in it. And you can have lean fish. So there are certain things that you could eat, very lean meats. So you could have proteins on your carb day too, but you would not have fat. Then on the fat day, it's just like the diabetes solution kit where you would have less than 20 grams of carbs. And so you could have broccoli and lettuce and spinach and tomatoes and onions and all that stuff, but you could also have a lot of fat stuff. So you could have like fatty cheese and meat and avocados and all that stuff on a fat day. Does that make sense?
Yes. All I really heard was no chips and guac.
No chip. Yeah. So chips are going to be out of the question. Just anything fried. So no French fries. And then things like ice cream, you would never have ice cream. You would never have pizza. Anything that has a mixture of fat and carbs would be out of the question.
Yeah. Very interesting. Okay. I'm excited to think about that a little bit more, see what you guys think, maybe experiment a little. Very interesting. Okay. Let's dig in today. We already have a lot of questions coming in. If you can post those in the Q&A, that would be wonderful. So not the chat, Q&A. All right. And just a reminder that Dr. Saunders is a wonderful doctor, but he is not your doctor. So please consult with your healthcare professional before you implement any of the things that we talk about today. We're going to talk about urinary incontinence. And I'm going to be honest, I am in my 40s. And so this is something that is starting to come up a lot in some circles that I am in, women who've had children. So I hear about this a lot. And so I am excited to chat about this. So urinary incontinence is just the loss of bladder control. And people often don't talk about this, but this affects a lot of people. And we've got questions from many of you. And so this will be good to dig into this. And, the joke is in the women groups, of course, is like, well, we can't go jump on the trampoline, or I can't jump rope, or, things like that. And let's talk about that. Why is that happening? Why is this becoming such a big deal?
Okay, it's always been a big deal. There's nothing new about urinary incontinence. It's just one of those topics that nobody wants to talk about. It's perfectly okay to say, I got to go change my baby's diaper. But it's really kind of shameful to say, I have to go change my diaper. And then to have to buy diapers. And you know that diapers are one of the things that are stolen the most from stores because people are ashamed to buy them. the big people's diapers. They're also get pretty expensive. If you have to use 4 or 5 of them a day, and you're paying us, it could be a couple $100 a month in diapers if you're incontinent, several times a day. So let's look at that. What is incontinence exactly? Well, it's urine leaking when you don't want it to leak. So when you want it to leak, yeah, it's great. But when you don't want it to leak, then it's really inconvenient, among other things. It smells bad and it's a problem, and it's very embarrassing. So no one wants to say, "Oh, I'm getting leaky," or yeah, they tell jokes about it because it's embarrassing and people will laugh. But there are two major kinds of incontinence. One is called stress incontinence, and that's what Leslie was talking about, jumping on the trampoline or laughing or coughing or sneezing. And when you put that pressure, it's called a Valsalva maneuver. When you put pressure in your abdomen, then you put pressure on the bladder. And if you don't have a good sphincter muscle, then the urine just leaks out. So that's stress incontinence, and that's a problem with the sphincter, the ability to hold the urine by the sphincter. And so that's a weakness of the sphincter, and that is actually one of the more fixable problems. That's an easier to fix problem. So in that case, you would start off with Kegel maneuvers, Kegel exercises. And they were named after a Dr. Kegel, who was a gynecologist who said, you know what, if you could tighten that sphincter and build up the ability for the sphincter to hold the urine, then as it got stronger, you would have less incontinence. And it turns out that it's true that it actually works. And so what is Kegel exercises? Well, you can look them up anywhere, but essentially it's holding that muscle closed that holds onto your urine. And it gives you more control over the muscle. So we always think of our sphincter muscles as autonomic. This is automatic. This is something that's just going to happen. I'm going to sit on the toilet and wait for a minute, and then the sphincter will relax and the urine will come out. But if you're out somewhere and you're saying, "Oh my gosh, I got to hold this," then you have a muscle that you can contract, that you have control over, to stop that urine from coming out. Even if the sphincter relaxes, you should be able to hold it. And when you're not holding it, that's where the Kegel exercise works, is that you have that part. So you can think of it as two different muscles. One is the autonomic one that just naturally holds on to it. And that can be a little loose. And then the other one is part of the pelvic floor muscles. And now those are under your control. And so that's what you're doing when you do the Kegel exercises. One way of doing Kegel exercises is every time you urinate, you stop the flow in the middle, and then you let it go, and then you stop it, and then you let it go, and then you stop it. And that gives you more control over that sphincter muscle. So that's stress incontinence. There's another type of incontinence called urge incontinence. And this is a totally different issue. This is where the bladder starts contracting. And if your bladder starts contracting, you're going to say, "Oh, I gotta go." And if you hold it, the bladder will stop contracting. It'll relax again. And then you'll have time to get to a bathroom. But what if it doesn't relax again? What if it just keeps going and keeps contracting? It puts more pressure on it. And especially if your sphincter isn't working really well to hold it, then as it contracts, the urine's just going to flow out whether you like it or not. So a lot of men and women, more commonly women, but I actually have a lot of men who have that issue of urge incontinence, where they say, "When I gotta go now." And I need a bathroom within 1 minute of wherever I am, or I'm going to lose it, and I'm going to get it all over the place. So that type of incontinence is very different from the stress incontinence, where you sneeze and a little bit leaks out. This is a bladder issue. And so they give you a medication for this, that relaxes the bladder and stops it from spasming. So it allows the bladder to relax more. And so if you've taken any of those medications, that's what they do. They just relax the bladder. You can learn how to relax the bladder in a different way, and that is using the parasympathetic nervous system. So training your parasympathetic nervous system allows you to have control over it. One indirect way of working on your parasympathetic system is deep breathing. So abdominal breathing, where you're pushing your diaphragms down, so your belly comes out, your intestines come out, and then that helps to learn how to use your parasympathetic system, and takes away some of the sympathetic balance. So sympathetic is the stimulation, and parasympathetic is the relaxation. This control over the bladder is the parasympathetic nervous system. So if you're stressed all the time, then you will tend to have this imbalance of more sympathetic, and you'll have things like urinary incontinence and acid reflux. Those are the sphincters that aren't working properly. And even SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth, because the sphincter from your colon is letting bacteria get up into your small intestine where it shouldn't be. So a lot of these issues, like urinary incontinence, are not just because you're getting old. It's because the imbalances in your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system.
Very interesting. Okay, so the other question too is, well, actually, you did kind of answer that already. It just seems like when I'm with older people, it's harder for them to go anywhere because they need to go so often. And I don't know that it's just not that they even hardly have to go, but they're thinking they do. And that would just be because that needs to be strengthened.
So sometimes the often is a different issue entirely. So women who've had children, they often have the bladder is kind of fallen down. So the bladder is normally up, and the urine drains out. And if the bladder falls down, it kinks. It doesn't flow easily, so it doesn't drain all the way. So you get a little bit, and you're full. The bladder's full, and then you go urinate, and you only drain a little bit of it out. And then so it doesn't take long to fill it up again. So you just have to go all the time. And that's not necessarily incontinence, that's urinary frequency. And in that case, there have been a lot of different procedures, surgical procedures for bladder neck suspension, or pinning the bladder up, or they have a sling. By the way, don't do the sling. I know it works sometimes and all that, but when it doesn't work, it is a disaster. I've had just 2 cases recently of people who've had a bladder sling, mesh sling, where the mesh has eaten into the wall of the bladder, and they can't get it out, and it's irritated all the time, and it's just it's a mess. It's really hard. So I wouldn't recommend the mesh sling. I've had several patients who have done the bladder neck suspension, where they use the tissue from the pelvic area, and that seems to be okay, at least for a while. It works pretty well. But see, the bladder has to be suspended properly so that it can drain out, just like any hose. You kink the hose, and it's just not going to drain very well, that kind of thing. So that's a different issue.
Okay. Let me see. Elliot had said the adult diapers are near the pharmacy counter at his local CVS, making them hard to steal. Okay. All right.
Oh, you know what? The other common thing that is stolen is preparation H. Nobody wants to admit they have hemorrhoids either.
Yep, that makes sense. All right. Any other questions about this specifically? I'm not even sure. Okay, I'm going to dig into some of these questions. Okay. So, all right. Lakshmi says, okay, so this is going to be, I believe, a diabetes type question. Uh, my fasting glucose from February of 24 to February of 25 was around 100. A1C was between 5.8 to 6.2. I maintained with lifestyle change without medication. In March, it spiked to 165 because of UTI. PCP wanted me to take 500 milligrams of metformin a day. I have been doing it for the past 2 weeks. I'm also taking your supplement, I think Synachroma. The level has not come down. It's still between 125 to 155. I do not get good sleep. I get up with heavy head. Glycemic index and glucose level of the foods I consume. I wonder what else I can do to bring that glucose level down to 100.
Okay. Actually, at 100, you were still high. And so your hemoglobin A1C being 5.8 is still pre-diabetic. And if you look at just looking at the mortality rate, the death rate between 5.4 and 5.8 is double the mortality rate. Why is that? Because the higher blood sugar, glucose does cause problems. It causes kidney problems. It causes nervous system problems. You definitely want your blood glucose to be between 70 and 90 on the fasting specimen. So don't shoot for 100, shoot for 70. And that's the best place to go. So your question for me is not how do I get it to 100? It's how do I get it to 70? So first of all, if you're sick and you have some kind of illness, then you're going to make more cortisol, and cortisol makes you resistant to insulin, and so you're going to have a much higher blood glucose. That's just the way it is. There isn't anything you should do about that. Taking metformin is not going to be helpful for that at all, because that's not the issue. You're not dealing with the problem by doing that. The other thing that you mentioned was sleep. If you're not sleeping at night, then you're going to have higher cortisol levels. You're going to have more insulin resistance, and your blood glucose is going to be higher. So it's important to get enough sleep. It's important to sleep by 10 o'clock at night and sleep for 8 hours. And if you wake up in the middle of the night, just lay there and rest. It's okay. People sometimes freak out about not waking up in the middle of the night and taking an hour to get back to sleep. That's fine. That's perfectly normal. It's okay. Just lay there and relax and meditate and pray and be happy, and it's okay. So the sleep is an issue. If your infection has not gone away, then find there's a reason for that. Take care of that. So take care of those issues first, and then start on phase 1 of the diabetes solution kit, and get your blood glucose down to 70.
All right. Anonymous said, I take the following vitamins daily: 200 milligrams of CoQ10, 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C, 50 milligrams of zinc, 50 milligrams of D3. Synachroma has 125 milligrams of D3. That would be a total of 175 milligrams per day. Is this too much vitamin D to take daily?
No, and not at all. 250 milligrams is about 10,000 units, and that's kind of in between the 5,000 units and 10,000 units, which is the 125 to 250 milligrams. That's the range of normal amounts. So we formulated Synachroma so that it would have enough vitamin D3, enough at 1 pill a day, without having too much at 2 pills a day. So some people need the extra vitamin D and chromium, and they're taking 2 pills a day, and that's still not too much. Okay. So it's okay.
Yeah. All right. Elliot had said, which vitamin or mineral can you take too much of?
Well, selenium gets toxic at high doses. Chromium gets toxic at high doses. Manganese. Manganese. Yeah, a lot of them can, and mostly if you take zinc like every day, then you don't absorb copper, so you could get a copper deficiency because of it. So there are some that have toxicity, like selenium clearly is toxic in high doses. But vitamin D, it's said that there's vitamin D toxicity, but doses of 1 million units are given to people in a coma. The toxicity of vitamin D is not vitamin D. It doesn't get toxic at high doses. It's the absorption of calcium. So some people will get hypercalcemia, high calcium. And that's mainly because they don't have enough vitamin K to take the calcium out of their blood and soft tissues and put it in their bones. So if you add vitamin K, then you won't get vitamin D toxicity. So other B vitamins are water soluble, and you can take a ton of them and never get toxic on them. I mean, like a lot. Like you said, you were taking vitamin B3 at 50 milligrams. There have been people taking 50 grams, like 1,000 times what you're taking, and they don't get toxic.
Okay, question here from Judy. I'm a 72-year-old female. I've never had children. I've been diagnosed with a prolapsed uterus. I also have had abdominal mesh from frequent hernias. I'm about 90 pounds overweight and I have type 2 diabetes. I started some pelvic floor exercise. Can I reverse the prolapsed uterus with just exercise? I'm on a 3-day dry fast right now.
Oh, wow, good for you. Okay, let's see. So the question is being able to reverse it with just the exercise. Possibly, but it's going to be really difficult because that extra 90 pounds, well, it's not all there, but that extra abdominal fat, the reason you're getting the hernias and all that, it pushes down on the pelvic organs. And so it's going to be very difficult while you have all of that fat, the omentum and visceral fat and all pushing down on the organs of your pelvis. It's going to be really hard to support that. But if you were to lose, since you're doing the fasting, you're probably going to lose a lot of that belly fat. So if you lose the belly fat, then yeah, I often send people to physical therapy, and there are specialists. We have like 2 of them in all of Santa Barbara County. We have like 2 physical therapy specialists in pelvic floor physical therapy, and they have like PhDs, and that's all they do is pelvic floor physical therapy. They're really good at helping people to build the right muscles to get things functioning properly. And that includes for urinary incontinence. So some people, I tried the Kegel exercises and they didn't work. And then you do these other pelvic floor exercises and they're going, wow, it really helped. It really made a difference. And so I found physical therapists make a big difference in people's lives by helping them or showing them how to rebuild and repair. So the answer to your question is yes, but that's a qualified yes, and I suspect that it would help a lot to get rid of the belly fat.
Devinder and Judy had asked, how much vitamin K and B12 should you take?
So vitamin B12, 1 milligram a day-ish, it's 1,000 micrograms. Most pills are somewhere around that. And I find most people have plenty, if not more than enough with that. So I often tell people who are super high in vitamin B12, yeah, just take 1 a week. Your liver stores it and you reuse it and reuse it and reuse it. So it's okay to just replace that once a week. The vitamin K, K2 is what has been studied the most to help get the calcium into the bones. And anywhere 100 to 300 micrograms is somewhere in the range of how much you should have in a day.
All right. Okay, so in the Q&A, actually, let me do this. There is some test results from Cheryl. It says, I got the results from the new labs you recommend. I went to the specialist yesterday. They want me to start taking Manjaro and slowly quit using insulin as I increase the Manjaro. They said I would have to take Manjaro for the rest of my life, most likely. Do you feel like that's true, or do I have a good chance of still reversing my diabetes? And is Manjaro really what I should use, or should I use something else? So here are all of these test results. Yesterday, continuous glucose monitor, it said A1C 7.2, 37 units of, I'm assuming semaglutide, or what is that?
No, it's a long-acting insulin.
Okay. And then my fasting blood sugar was 105. And then here are all of Cheryl's labs. So the C-peptide, A1C, all of that. So if you want to look over those,
Okay.
that helps.
You know what? I do have a lot of opinions about this because when you start something like Monjaro for the rest of your life, it hasn't been around that long to have any studies. What happens when people take it long term? And so if you look at like all these people are saying, oh, how wonderful this is and the weight loss and all of that, it makes you more insulin resistant. It's not a wonderful medication. It's something that is. I suspect in 5 years or so they're going to be saying, well, you should really avoid that medication. It's pretty bad. And the reason is because it does make you insulin resistant. So you don't eat as much, but you have more insulin resistance. So you're still going to have all the problems of diabetes. You're still going to get Alzheimer's and blindness and renal failure, kidney failure, and neuropathy because the insulin resistance is going to go up. So, and using 37 units of long-acting insulin a day is a lot of insulin. That's more than your pancreas makes in a day. And that means you have a lot of insulin resistance. And the insulin antibodies are low, and your EGFR, so your kidney function is okay, glomerular filtration rate is okay, islet cell antibodies are negative, insulin was less than 1, C-peptide 0.45. So you're not making a lot of insulin in your pancreas, but you are making some insulin in your pancreas. So you have an option because you do have some insulin, and so and this will really help a lot of things. Your longevity will go up, everything will improve. So with the amount of insulin that you're making from your pancreas, you don't need injections of insulin. So the way to handle this is to go on phase 1 of the program. And phase 1 allows you less than 20 grams of carbohydrates a day, and you must exercise every day. And you must exercise enough to open up your insulin receptors in your muscles and allow some insulin to come into your muscle cells. In other words, it's not good enough just to walk around the block once and say, yeah, I did my exercise today. I took the dog for a walk. That's not going to be enough. You're going to have to push it a little bit, like doing high intensity interval training, HIIT, is where you push really hard, like you sprint as fast as you can for just 10 seconds, and then you walk for 30 seconds, and then you sprint as fast as you can for 10 seconds, and then you walk for 30 seconds. And you do that for about 10 minutes a day. And you could do that with other exercises. You could do push-ups as hard as you can for 30 seconds, and then just do a plank, or for 10 seconds, and then do a plank for 30 seconds. Something like that, where you're doing a heavy exercise for a short time in just like 10 seconds. That will allow you, when you push hard, that will allow your muscles to open up and allow the glucose into the muscles. And so you'll be able to store glycogen and everything. That'll be a big help. And then you won't need any extra insulin, and you definitely won't need Mounjaro. So just go on phase 1 of the program and do HIIT training. And that would be adequate, and you would be able to get off all your medication, including any oral medication or even supplements.
All right, love this. Okay. Jan says, I'm wondering how much berberine can keep me from having to take metropolol. What is that one for again?
No, metoprolol is a beta blocker to slow down your heart. So berberine kind of takes the place of metformin, but wouldn't take the place of metoprolol.
Okay. Jan said they told me to get off of it for hip replacement, and I wound up in the hospital unable to keep anything down for days. I was wondering if I might have been detoxing.
I don't know. Or you might have been toxic on something else,
Yeah,
from the anesthesia and all that. I've had people have that issue.
yeah.
No, I don't know.
Okay. Let's see. Lakshmi said I ate 1 cup of ripe mango around 7 p.m. last night. Oh, oh, my blood sugar just went up thinking about that. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds really good though. Really good. Just like pineapple. Okay.
Yeah.
So ate that at 7 p.m. last night, no food after. At 10:30, the glucose is 152. My non-fasting glucose level during the day is between 110 and 125.
Yeah. Okay. So you have probably insulin resistance. I don't know how much insulin you're making. So you should do 3 tests or 4 tests. Do the hemoglobin A1C, and then do a blood sugar with it so that you could see an immediate, because you want to be able to look at the insulin resistance index, which requires the blood glucose. So do hemoglobin A1C, glucose, C-peptide, and insulin levels. Those 4 tests will tell you whether you have a problem with making insulin or you have a problem with insulin resistance. So you have too little insulin, then you don't have enough insulin, then your blood sugar is going to go up. If you have too much insulin or a lot of insulin, then you're insulin resistant. Either way, you can start on phase 1 of the program and reverse this process.
I was just looking, 25 grams of carbs in 1 cup of mango.
25 grams, yeah. So that's more than your full day's supply. But yeah, that's
Yeah, so good though. I get
yeah,
it.
so
Okay.
good. Got a lot of fructose in it.
Let's see. Devinder says, can low carb cause insomnia? I'm in phase 1. I cannot sleep. Were you sleeping before you started phase 1?
Yeah, that's like the guy that was getting his hand operated on and asked the surgeon, "Will I be able to play the piano?" And the surgeon said, "Well, sure." And he goes, "Good, because I could never do it before." So, does low carb cause insomnia? Well, I noticed that fasting, when I did low carb, I didn't have a problem with insomnia at all. But I noticed that fasting, often I didn't need as much sleep. It seemed like I had enough sleep with less. I seemed to get along with less sleep. Wasn't as tired. So yes, it can, in the sense of when you're just starting with ketones, your brain things are switching around. Give it time. Don't worry about it. But yeah, just go to bed early. 10 o'clock. If you wake up in the night, just lay there and rest, and just close your eyes and rest, and it's okay.
This has been coming up more and more. Whitney says, do ozone treatments do anything for your health?
Okay, let's talk about ozone. Ozone is O3. So oxygen is O2. That's the gas. Oxygen is O2. And ozone is O3. And that means there's 3 oxygens put together instead of 2. And it's a highly reactive molecule that causes oxygen-free radicals. And the free radicals oxidize things, right? And so in a sense, that's good. In another sense, it's bad. So ozone, a lot of pollution, like air pollution, there's ozone in the air, and that causes irritation in the lungs. And people often say, "Oh, I can't breathe deep because of all the air pollution," and that's ozone. It's not particulate matter. It's ozone, and there's some nitrogen species too, like nitric oxide. But ozone specifically is a reactive oxygen species. So think of it that way. Don't think of it as it's good or it's bad. It just is something. So can it be good? Can it be helpful? Well, I have seen amazing things happen. People who have um, uh, pneumonia. I had a woman with pneumonia. After an ozone treatment, she was back to work the next day. You never see that, like somebody with pneumonia. They're in bed for weeks. And we did an X-ray. She had pneumonia, and her oxygen level was low. And one ozone treatment took it away. So if you have something like an infectious disease, I don't know any specifically, but I've heard of people with Lyme disease being treated with ozone, where they actually take a full syringe full of ozone and bubble it in directly into the vein. And then that vein just dies because of all the oxygen free radicals that are created. But you got other veins, it's not a big deal. But it killed the bacteria, the spirochete, that is Lyme disease. At least they got better because of it. So yes, ozone can be helpful if you have a specific problem that ozone might help, such as an infectious disease. If you have an inflammatory condition or diabetes or something like that, ozone probably wouldn't be a good idea, because you already have inflammation, and the ozone is going to increase your inflammation.
All right. KJ said, why am I having blood sugar spikes during a 72-hour fast? I started yesterday morning. For the past week, my blood glucose levels have been in the upper 90s when I wake up and before I go to bed. Last night, I was at a music rehearsal, and for some reason, it spiked to 140, then came back down about 1 to 2 hours after I got home. This morning, the same thing. I woke up at 94, then for no apparent reason, it jumped to 140. At the moment, I'm about 30 minutes after my morning aerobic exercise, and it's coming down again. And I know that exercise can raise blood glucose levels. Why the spikes when I'm relatively inactive and on an empty stomach?
Okay, that's great. So the blood glucose is not a one-to-one thing. Like I eat, I get blood glucose, and I don't eat, and I don't get blood glucose. Glucose is a constant level, and there are many factors that are involved in what your blood glucose is. So exercise has something to do with it. So I was explaining before that if you're exercising enough, then your muscle cells don't need insulin. They can just suck glucose right in without any insulin. And so if your glucose starts dropping a little low, then your pancreas starts making something called glucagon. And glucagon goes to your liver and says, hey, you better pump out some more glucose. So then the liver starts pumping out glucose, taking glycogen and breaking it up and spitting glucose out. And then the glucose goes up again. And then you haven't eaten in days, and you've used up all the glucose. And so the glucagon from the pancreas tells your liver, well, if you don't have any glycogen, then you better start making it. So it takes glycine or glutamine. And the liver takes glutamine and makes it into glucose. And so you start making a bunch of glucose again, and boom, your glucose goes up again. So those glucose spikes are an indicator that you have not reached a normal glucose level yet, that you have not reached a normal thermostat range, where you want it to be between 70 and 90. And so if it's dropping below 100 and your pancreas starts saying, oh my gosh, we better start making more, or your liver starts pumping out a bunch of glucose and it spikes again, that means that you're not yet into the normal range for your blood glucose, and you still have some insulin resistance. So in the morning, it's obvious, because when you make a bunch of cortisol in the morning, cortisol causes you to be insulin resistant, and so your blood glucose goes up, and you're making it, your liver's making it, and it's going to go up because you're going to be resistant to it because of the stress. Well, the stress hormone called cortisol. that everybody releases in the morning. So that's a normal thing. But the important part here, the important take-home message is when you see that, it means that you don't yet have a normalized glucose, that you're still insulin resistant.
Okay, let me see here. There's a question I wanted to ask here. Oh, Allison had said, last week you said that you eat breakfast and lunch, but no dinner. What do you eat for breakfast and lunch?
Oh, well, let's see. This morning I had a burrito, a breakfast burrito. I usually have beans. 2 days ago I had soup, beef stew, for breakfast. And then for lunch, I sometimes have fruit. I've had a salad. I've things that I could eat easily. So I usually have, something like that.
Because you're working.
Yeah, because I'm working.
Okay. Let's see. Randy says I have been using Synachroma for about a year and got all of my balance back, but still have numbness. Will Synachroma stop the progression of that numbness?
Probably not. I think that probably, you should try you should try Nervala. Nervala has two things in it, alpha lipoic acid and benfotiamine, which should help the numbness much more than Synachroma.
Awesome. Okay. I think Randy's talking to Joe about some of this, but Randy had said, why is it that things are so expensive? I'm 66 on a fixed income and can barely afford paper towels. Why doesn't corporate America care about us? Seems like nobody cares about us. And we're the generation that was in Vietnam, etc. But now we're either disabled or retired on a limited income. And I think, Joe, you answered this probably already.
Randy and I have been having a great side conversation here during the webinar. So yeah, well, I mean that's true. Like, and Dr. Saunders, you can add to this as well. But yeah, taking care of your health can be expensive sometimes. But I told Randy early on in our chat, like, I think you'll like the answer Dr. Saunders has, just because you can do a lot just by like fasting, by not eating, and a lot of the, you know, different things that we see. I know everybody gets bombarded with different product offers and things like that. And so, and a lot of it is marketing. So you got to keep that in mind, and hopefully you'll learn through the webinars here, like what actually is, good and helpful. One thing about Barton Nutrition and our products specifically that I think makes us unique is that Dr. Saunders formulates our products using like dosages of ingredients that have scientific studies behind them to prove like their effectiveness and stuff. And so a lot of other companies will do what's called fairy dusting, and they will just, include like maybe a little bit of this or a little bit of that to say that they have all these ingredients, but they may not actually be enough to even positively affect your health. So anyways, Dr. Saunders, if you want to share with that, like how would you add to that, and how do you talk to people and help people that maybe have a very limited budget?
Okay, so very often when people come into my office, I will tell them that I will save them more money than they will pay me. that essentially they're going to come and see me for free because I'm going to tell them what not to buy, or the things that they don't need. Like I had somebody doing $9,000 for peptide injections, and I'm like, okay. We can do that for free. If you fast, then you make the ghrelin and you don't have to have the injection anymore. And then you can save the whatever hundreds of dollars on that. And we went down the list, and I said, okay, so this is how you do it naturally, so that you don't need to do that. And like you said, Joe, fasting is a good way to get your health back. And it doesn't cost anything. It's free. You don't have to go to a restaurant. You don't have to buy special food. In fact, you can live on ramen noodles and vegetables. You really eat cheap food, and if you fast periodically, you will be healthier than people who are eating, the perfect vegan or keto or whatever diet they're on. So fasting is that good. It's that much better than eating. So we often say in our society, "Oh, you need more of this. You need more of that." But that's not reality. Reality is you need less of this and less of that. So in that sense, if you look at how much money you'd save on supplements, how much money you'd save on all of the visits to doctors and whatever, and all of the money that you would save on food, dang, that's it's really not that hard.
Yeah. Well, and just I want to say great job to Randy. He shared that his A1C numbers were at 14.9 and now it's around 5.6, which is like I don't think we've heard much more of a drastic transformation in anybody before. Like that's amazing. Sugar numbers were 496. Now they're between 90 and 110.
Wow.
I think he said he dropped about 90 pounds, 90 to 100 pounds, or 100 to 110 pounds actually. So just fantastic. And he's going to be sending me a video testimonial, which I greatly appreciate. But like, yeah, that's just awesome work. And so would love to hear more about. I would imagine he's told me that Synachroma really helped him a lot, but I imagine he's doing more than Synachroma with that. He must have done like phase 1, phase 2. So it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well done, Randy. Let's hear it for Randy. Woo!
Woohoo, good work.
No, we still don't have that clapping background noise. Darn it. Work on that. There we go.
Well, sometimes, okay, I don't think it's.
Maybe if we're on our phones. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. We got one whole minute. Randy says, my health insurer allows me to do a complete lab panel every 3 months. So I only know things like my A1C and glucose level every 3 months. Do you recommend a glucose meter to know these numbers more regularly? Both of my numbers have been higher than normal the past 2 years. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, if I were you, I would consider getting a continuous glucose monitor that you can wear continuously and look on your phone and graph out your blood glucose. That way, you can see exactly what's affecting. How does exercise affect my blood glucose? How does food affect my blood glucose? What and why isn't it going down? And look, it's continuously elevated. And why isn't it going down? Yeah, with that data, you can make changes in your life a lot better, a lot more easily. Every 3 months is like that's not going to be helpful.
Okay. Let's see. Have you heard of bladder genics? I think it's to stop urinary incontinence. Or genics, maybe. Bladder genics.
Bladdergenics. No, not familiar with it.
Devinder said, should I continue taking berberine, metformin, insulin in phase 1?
Berberine, metformin, insulin. Yes, you can take all of those, but work with your doctor. And the idea is to get off insulin. Insulin is the problem. First, you need a test called the C-peptide test to see if your pancreas is putting out insulin. And if your pancreas is making sufficient insulin, then you should be able to get off the insulin pretty easily.
Okay, Dr. Saunders, thank you so much for being here with us. We'll go through the rest of these, see if we can help with anything.
You're welcome.
See you next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Randy said, thank you to Joe and Dr. Saunders for answering that so greatly and with care. Okay, let me see here what else. A recommended continuous glucose monitor product. If you can ask your doctor for a prescription, that's the best way to do it if you're a type 2 diabetic. If not, I think there are a few of them now that you can get. Maybe Stella or I don't know which other ones are available to the general public, but I know that that is one brand. I don't know if you know any more, Joe.
I don't. Yeah, I
Okay.
think Stello is a Dexcom product and you don't need a prescription or anything like that. So I've used that myself and it's been insightful.
Okay. Um, anything else?
Well, this has been really good. Good to be
Yeah.
back. I've been traveling a lot lately, so been missing these webinars, but always good to learn from Dr. Saunders and hear from
Yeah.
our customers and see that we're how we're helping people. So that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
why we do what we do, delivering hope and healing.
But all right. Thank you all for being here. Come back next week. Tell a friend. Send them to bartonwebinar.com. And don't forget to use the code webinar25, that's one word, to save 25%. All right.